Blaise Pascal once wrote that the sole cause of man's unhappiness is that he does not know how to stay quietly in his room. But some people do know how, and you can spot them by one simple thing. They don't post themselves on social media. In a world where silence has become suspicious, where every meal, milestone, and meaningless moment is photographed, edited, uploaded, and performed, a small group of people stand out. Not because they shout the loudest, but because they say nothing at all. They don't post. They don't perform. They quietly opt out. But why? Why choose invisibility in an age obsessed with visibility? For many people who avoid posting, autonomy is everything. Psychologists remind us that privacy is a fundamental human need, one that supports mental health, self-determination, and emotional balance. These individuals don't want their moods dictated by likes or followers. Their self-esteem doesn't rise and fall with an algorithm. Instead, they draw worth from within, from lived experiences, from their own values. They set boundaries between what is public and what is private, deciding intentionally what parts of their lives are to be shared and what parts deserve to stay sacred. They act as gatekeepers of their own story. In a world where everyone is encouraged to brand themselves, market themselves, and perform themselves, they refuse to hand over control of their identity. Psychologists note that privacy strengthens autonomy by giving us room to make decisions independently. That space allows non-posters to form a coherent sense of self, one not constantly distorted by the need for approval. They also understand boundaries in a deeply practical way. They avoid the constant noise of connectivity, the endless pings and notifications demanding attention. By protecting their mental space, non-posters shield themselves from burnout. Without the pressure to react, respond, or curate every moment, they conserve emotional energy for what actually matters in their lives. Above all, their refusal to post is an act of self-governance, a quiet rebellion. In a time when everyone is encouraged to turn their lives into a polished brand, an end-stage capitalist dream of constant self-promotion, non-posters choose something different. They choose their freedom. They choose authenticity. And they make choices based on values, not visibility. Closely tied to autonomy is something even more powerful: intrinsic motivation. People who don't post themselves tend to rely on internal validation rather than external applause. They celebrate privately. They let joy exist in the moment itself, not in the number of likes that moment might gather online. Neuroscience shows that social media rewards, likes, hearts, shares, trigger the same dopamine pathways activated by addictive substances. Every notification is a tiny high, but the thrill is short-lived. Over time, chasing these highs can create a dopamine deficit, leaving people anxious, restless, and unsatisfied. Non-posters sidestep this entire cycle. Their sense of worth comes from an internal locus of control, from personal values, achievements, and relationships, not from a shifting audience. They avoid the emotional roller coaster of the like counter. They don't measure success in followers. They don't need applause to feel real. Instead, they define happiness privately, completing a project, spending time with loved ones, enjoying a moment without interruption. They don't need to broadcast these experiences to make them meaningful. And because they aren't chasing external rewards, they can actually enjoy life more deeply. Many non-posters live by an unspoken belief: the best memories are lived, not posted. Without the impulse to document everything, they become more present. They immerse themselves fully in experiences instead of framing moments for an audience. Researchers warn that turning life into a performance fragments our attention. But non-posters naturally practice mindfulness, feeling emotions directly, noticing details, letting memories settle into the mind instead of the camera roll. They also experience far less cognitive load. Constantly updating an audience is mentally exhausting. Being visible all the time forces people into chronic self-monitoring. How do I look? How will this be received? What do people think? This mental vigilance drains energy and contributes to burnout. But those who choose silence on social media free themselves from this burden. Their minds have room to breathe, reflect, and rest. Over time, this way of living produces a calmer, more grounded life. People who don't post carry their memories internally instead of outsourcing them to the internet. They reflect more, observe more, feel more. By resisting the constant urge to broadcast, they cultivate presence, privacy, and peace, three qualities that are becoming rare in modern life. And in the end, those who don't post aren't strange or mysterious at all. They're simply choosing a different relationship with themselves and the world. They value autonomy. They protect their inner lives. They refuse to let an algorithm shape their identity. They find happiness not in being seen, but in being whole, grounded, and free. These are the quiet ones in a loud world. And sometimes the ones who say nothing have the most to teach us. But for many, the decision not to post also comes from a deeper emotional place. Social media can feel like a stage full of judges. For someone with social anxiety, even the thought of posting can be overwhelming. They worry about how they look, how they speak, how they're perceived. Jean-Paul Sartre captured this feeling in his famous keyhole metaphor. When you're looking through a keyhole and suddenly realize someone is watching you, you become painfully self-conscious. You feel exposed, objectified, judged. For many people, posting a photo feels exactly like that moment. Suddenly you're visible to everyone, and that visibility can be terrifying. Fear of negative evaluation becomes a powerful deterrent. Some people stay silent online because they're afraid of criticism, or of becoming a target of ridicule, or of not measuring up. They see the speed with which the internet can shame someone and think, why would I risk that? So they protect their peace by staying out of the spotlight. Their self-esteem stays safer in private than on a public stage. Social media also amplifies comparison to an extreme level. Our brains were never designed to compare ourselves to thousands of people a day. One neuroscientist explains that the sheer scale of online comparison overwhelms the mind, making us feel permanently inadequate. When every scroll shows someone richer, happier, fitter, more successful, it's easy to spiral into disappointment. Non-posters avoid this trap almost entirely. By removing themselves from the highlight reel, they protect their identity from being shaped by unrealistic comparisons. Their sense of worth isn't tied to how they stack up against strangers on a screen. They value stability over spectacle, and so their mood remains steadier. This distance from social evaluation often creates emotional resilience. Quiet individuals learn to rely on their own judgment. Their identity becomes anchored in their real relationships, their personal values, and their private victories. When they feel low, it's because of real-life problems they can actually address, not because of what someone posted or commented. Over time, this internal strength gives them a sense of self-worth that doesn't depend on applause. Beyond psychology, many non-posters speak from a more philosophical place. They want authenticity, a life that feels real, not curated. Existentialists like Sartre warned that living for the eyes of others leads to a shallow, inauthentic existence. When he said hell is other people, he didn't mean that people are bad. He meant that constantly seeing ourselves through the gaze of others can become a prison. It makes us perform rather than live. Non-posters see this danger clearly. They're tired of constantly constructing an image. They want to exist without turning themselves into content. Some thinkers use Foucault's idea of the panopticon to explain social media, a world where everyone watches everyone. Every post is monitored, tracked, analyzed. The result is a digital culture where we police ourselves because we know we might be judged. Foucault warned that when we know we're always visible, we start controlling ourselves automatically. We become the instruments of our own surveillance. Non-posters refuse this. By choosing silence, they step outside the digital prison. They reclaim their autonomy. They reject the constant, invisible supervision of the online world. From a social psychological viewpoint, not posting becomes an act of resistance. It's a way of saying, I choose who sees me. I choose what I share. I choose my identity. And as the poet Rainer Maria Rilke once wrote, the quieter you become, the more you are able to hear.